Welcome back to the Contrarian, everyone. It's been a little while since I've made a video. I know that that's, maybe not ideal, but also not a ton has happened in the markets in the last week. Of course, we had inflation, CPI and PPI come in a little higher than what was expected, and the markets did sell off on that news. And then PCE came in actually under what was expected, and the markets rallied on that news. So I think we're really seeing the stock market had kind of a, I would say, consolidation kind of week where the markets did sell off pretty aggressively after Powell's statement basically being more hawkish than what the markets might have been expecting. And so the markets did sell off a lot on Thursday, but then did recover on Friday. And so, just thinking about all of that, there is a bit of, I would say, just kind of consolidation and just almost a little bit of a reset of investor sentiment that did take place this week. And going into the end of the year and certainly going into the beginning of 2025, I do remain very optimistic on the markets. I do think there's kind of a lot of short-term juice that can be injected per se into the markets. I know that's not a very technical term, but long story short, I do think that David Hunter's Melta prediction is unfolding pretty much as he thought it would. It's definitely taken longer than he thought it would, but I think we're very close to kind of seeing that blow off top type of move, especially given all of the hype and just optimism surrounding the upcoming administration and government efficiency and everything like that. So I guess bottom line, I do remain very optimistic on the markets generally speaking, and of course, the big topic that I will talk about today of crypto and everything involving that, and Bitcoin, Michael Saylor, and Microstrategy, and that whole gigantic can of worms, to put it mildly, I don't remain optimistic on that. So I remain skeptical on crypto, and I will really detail today why I remain skeptical of crypto, why I don't play around in cryptocurrency, although I really don't like calling it a currency because it is not a currency. But in crypto, the kind of gambling world and tokenization that I see it as, I'll really kind of lay out the reasons why I don't see really any sort of value in crypto. I do open it up. I'd love to hear your comments about all of it, what I mention. I just ask that you present actual data and facts and things like that, because there is just so much, I would say, hype and noise surrounding crypto, and hope, for sure, like hope that this will actually, become a strategic Bitcoin reserve or something like that for the US government. I would say that's probably the major hope going on right now, but all I ask is that you just kind of present arguments along that line of actual data that I can respond to. So without further ado, getting into cryptocurrency and everything involving that and Bitcoin. Of course, Bitcoin is the first crypto, started kind of back around the Great Financial Crisis by Satoshi Nakamoto, who does remain unknown. I'll kind of drop a hint that I do believe that it's very likely that the NSA was actually involved prior to the official launch of Bitcoin. And I base this off of patents that the NSA actually has surrounding basically some of the algorithmic functions within Bitcoin and the network actually were patented by the NSA back in the early 2000s. So even before Bitcoin was really a thing that was ever talked about on any of these online chat forums or anything, the NSA actually did patent several, I would say, just kind of key functions of how Bitcoin does actually work within the blockchain. And so Bitcoin, of course, was the first blockchain type of technology to actually be rolled out. And of course, in its first few years, it was really just, I would say, just a place for your really kind of out there computer geeks who wanted to, use it for gaming and gambling. And of course, it did quickly attract the money laundering and criminal type of activity as well. And going forward, it did gradually, I would say, spill into the broader market, broader public awareness that it was a thing. And from then, it did really spiral into, I would just say, a lot of speculation and hype-driven kind of mania, which of course we are seeing right now. We saw it back in 2021 and 2017. And then there was maybe a short blip of this back in 2014 as well. So it's gone through different cycles of hype and bubble type of behavior, and then selling off dramatically, 80 or 90% sell-offs. And basically everyone who gets in at the top gets wiped out and usually sells for gigantic loss. And then the cycle has kind of repeated itself every, anywhere from 2 to 4 years. I would say I wasn't really expecting crypto and Bitcoin to have another kind of hype-driven cycle, given the fact that we're still pretty close to when it did crash back in 2022, and there was the whole FTX, and I would say just kind of crypto fallout that occurred back then. And I mean, maybe it's just due to the fact that people are now very quick to forget recent occurrences and everything like that, and so people are quick to forget that and then easy to fool again. However, this most recent cycle in Bitcoin and crypto and everything does appear to I would say, have less less retail participation than previous cycles, and I really just base this on my personal encounters. Back in 2021 and in 2017, it was the case where people in my life, just random people, friends, coworkers, things like that, were coming up to me and talking about crypto and talking about, how much money they'd made in different altcoins or Bitcoin, or how they were hoping to make money like these other people they knew, and that was why they had gotten in. And usually this was kind of around, I would say, kind of the peak hype, and usually they didn't end up making money in crypto. And that was back in the 2017 and 2021 blow off tops and bubble type of scenarios that occurred in crypto. I'm just not really seeing that level of retail participation this time, and so I do really wonder if that's going to happen this time around in crypto. It might be the case where there have just been so many people suckered into crypto in the last decade that there's not that many people left who can be. I could be wrong, but just from my perspective, at least so far, it doesn't really appear to have that much retail participation. This time around, of course, we do have the hype that has been created by all of the ETFs that are recently launched in the last 1 to 2 years. Of course, you have BlackRock, other financial institutions all launching Bitcoin-based ETFs, and then even talks of other type of crypto ETFs coming up. And so I would say you have the hype surrounding the kind of, I would say, mainstream financialization of crypto, which, if you go and read some of the original Bitcoin white papers, that would seem to kind of go completely against what the original creators of Bitcoin were saying, whoever they might be. But like Satoshi Nakamoto, Hal Finney, Adam Back, kind of these original voices in the crypto space and Bitcoin space, I think they wouldn't be that happy with, just the direction that Bitcoin's gone with, how it's kind of been taken over by what would appear to be the established financial institutions. But, maybe that's just me as a crypto skeptic being pessimistic, but, so there is a lot of hype that has been created in the last year surrounding kind of the more broadly based institutionalization of Bitcoin. And then, of course, since the election of Donald Trump, you have the hope, kind of the hype that he will somehow create a Bitcoin strategic reserve, which, in my mind, that's probably Trump just trying to play on available optimism that's out there. I think if there wasn't this kind of, euphoria and optimism surrounding crypto, if it wasn't kind of this, this thing in which you can participate and build momentum behind your campaign. I don't think he would actually care about crypto at all. He has mentioned that, there will be some sort of role that crypto will play, and, going forward. And I do think that that might be the case where, for example, if the US wanted to create some kind of blockchain technology, ideally having it be backed by something that actually exists, like gold or some other kind of asset like that. I think that there is an actual place for that. Of course, the actual Bitcoin founders and everything like that, I don't know that they would really appreciate this as, thinking from their perspective, this is effectively going back on what they were originally thinking Bitcoin would do, of kind of getting out of you know, the government's ability to just print a currency. And of course, if the cryptocurrency is capped at a limited amount, I mean, yes, that is a helpful place to start, but if it's not backed by anything physical that actually exists, it's kind of a meaningless, concept to begin with. Which, of course, crypto, in my mind, kind of at this point is almost a store of speculation. It's a greater fool type of investment where you hope that the person, you hope that there's people willing to pay a higher price than what you paid for it, which is not the case with, I would say, any other kind of financial asset that actually does have intrinsic value, that has some kind of discounted future cash flow or something like that. It's a bond, a stock, commodity, whatever. Crypto is kind of unique in the fact that it doesn't have any kind of tangible or cash flow type of properties to it. I will say the big elephant in the living room when it comes to Bitcoin and crypto, but especially Bitcoin, is the stablecoin Tether. I've talked about this a lot in the past, but Tether is very much so, in my mind, kind of the bulwark behind which crypto actually gets some kind of, juice going into it that does then induce retail speculation and demand coming into crypto. So if you go back and look at, Tether's market cap, especially in the last couple of months since the election, it's very, I would just say, unnatural kind of behavior that you have where randomly, or not randomly, but it does very much so align with the immediate, I would say, just kind of step function like kind of behavior that you see in Bitcoin. Tether essentially prints fake stablecoins and then injects that liquidity into Bitcoin, which then of course boosts the price of Bitcoin, and so that in turn induces retail and other just investor speculation into Bitcoin. And that in large part is why you do have this kind of unique, I would say, wave of speculation right now, although it's not actually that much retail participation this time around. So apart from Michael Saylor and Microstrategy and some other kind of larger names in the Bitcoin space, and Tether, of course, I don't really see that much participation in crypto or in Bitcoin right now. And so I do kind of wonder how long this current hype-driven cycle in Bitcoin can continue. Of course, Michael Saylor and his shell company at this point, Microstrategy, kind of an interesting topic, of course, because he is essentially kind of almost inducing a self-feeding run-up in the price of Bitcoin with his company Microstrategy, where he will borrow money, buy Bitcoin, add Bitcoin to the balance sheet. Of course, that boosts the valuation of Microstrategy, a publicly traded company, and then when the price of Bitcoin goes up, he is then able to issue more shares and borrow more money, so essentially just taking on more leverage to then buy more Bitcoin, which then boosts the price of Bitcoin, and then you can see how that has unfolded until now. And until, I would say, the last 2 to 3 weeks, this has worked out pretty well for Microstrategy. It had a good, 2 to 3 months of this cycle really feeding well into boosting its market cap, to where at this point I do believe that Microstrategy is actually due to enter into the NASDAQ 100, which I think is a huge mistake on the part of that market index, I really do think they're going to regret that, because no one's really talked about it yet, but what happens when the price of Bitcoin reverses and that cycle essentially goes in reverse? At a certain point, you would have MicroStrategy be completely underwater on their positions. You'd have massive unrealized losses on the books at MicroStrategy, and at a certain point, you would, I would think, have massive risk of them having to default on all of these loans they've taken out. And so I do think that's a major mistake on the part of the NASDAQ 100, whoever, whatever committee was on the, decision point of this. I think they're really going to regret adding MicroStrategy in if that actually ends up happening. But, Michael Saylor, of course, he actually does come from the .com era, where MicroStrategy was a major one of those other just kind of hope-driven, hype-driven, speculative companies, the .com era, that didn't actually have any sort of underlying technology, that then actually had a massive sell-off in the .com bust. And so Michael Saylor comes from that era. It's kind of like, once a fraudster, I think you are kind of always a fraudster, in the sense of, having to be susceptible to that. And I'm somewhat surprised that the mainstream media has really overlooked this kind of backstory of Michael Saylor's behavior. I do think the media is probably just kind of going where the most clicks are to be made, where the most money is to be made for them, and that, of course, is, in talking about this financial asset that they see as going to the moon right now. And of course, Michael Saylor is very willing to go on and create all this hype where he can about Bitcoin and crypto, generally speaking, to where at this point, I think it's obvious to most people just the fact that he needs Bitcoin to keep going up in price, or, kind of these disastrous financial calamities could happen to his company. And so it'll be interesting to see what the end game for MicroStrategy is, what the end game for crypto is. I do see it as, an extremely speculative bubble that, if you can get in right and participate right in it, which very few people do, but if you can kind of go against the crowd, per se, and get in at the right time and then get out at the right time, there's a lot of money to be made there. But also, if you get in at the wrong time, there is really just a lot of risk, because there's nothing supporting it. It's kind of like online gambling or something else, just extremely speculative, whether it be, options trading or futures trading or whatever. I mean, it does add a lot of leverage, I would say, to your portfolio, and of course that can be beneficial if crypto keeps going up. But once the game of musical chairs ends and crypto starts going down, the sell-offs really do accelerate to the downside. And I think, if anything, a dynamic like what MicroStrategy might have to do if they're forced to sell much or all of their Bitcoin at massive losses, I mean, that is going to add massive selling pressure. And then you're going to have selling pressure from all these just, other institutional investors who kind of lose the optimism for crypto. They're going to sell all the ETFs, not all of them, but, selling will occur in the ETFs. And I do see just a lot of downside in crypto. Maybe there's a little more upside from here. Maybe Bitcoin can go to 120, 130,000 or something like that. But, all the talk of it going up to 300,000 or a million this cycle, I think it won't get anywhere close to that. That's just my personal view. Again, let me know what your thoughts are in crypto, but I'd love to know what all of you think about this in the comment section below. Of course, talked about Tether and Bitcoin, the origins of Bitcoin, all these, tens of thousands of altcoins that now exist. It's kind of crazy that something like called Fartcoin now has a market cap of over 900 million. It's, of course, a completely useless altcoin. And anyway, there's all sorts of crazy stories in Bitcoin. I could keep talking for a while, but I'd love to know what all of you think about this in the comment section below. Hope to see all of you again at some point.